It is the busiest time of the summer holiday season in Europe. The best time to visit Europe. Relatively cool weather, which does not exceed 22 degrees Celsius usually. Sun-soaked islands and cities, bright blue clear beaches and rivers, and snow-covered alpines. But this year is set to change the summer tradition, thanks to climate change. The continent of Europe is facing multiple heat waves, killing the cool summer vibes this year. Half of the continent is set to face extreme temperatures, and the other half is running out of water. The Netherlands, the land of water in Europe, has officially run out of water. The Dutch government has declared a water shortage following an unusually dry summer with no rain forecast for the coming 2 weeks. 2/3 of the Dutch population living below sea level. And droughts could quickly become a serious problem in the Netherlands, leading to rivers silting up and hampering the water traffic. Further problem arising from dikes drying out. Many require the weight of water itself to remain strong, and it's been drying for several weeks now because of evaporation. At the moment, barges on the lower Rhine are operating at less than half capacity. It's an important route for transporting coal from Rotterdam inland to German steelmakers and power producers. Water was flowing through the Rhine at 850 cubic meters per second, which is exceptionally low for this time of the year. There is a large artificial freshwater lake in the north of the country, which is reasonably filled and can supply water to the nearby provinces. But the groundwater levels are sinking, and in the south, leading to algae blooms and fish deaths. Drinking water is not affected yet. Water districts are calling for people to conserve water, with southern provinces asking people not to use surface water for watering, a measure that affects the farmers. Professor Piet Wodenschot is joining us from Amsterdam. He is the Special Chair of Wetland Restoration Ecology at the Institute for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Dynamics. Thanks very much for being here with us. If you can start by telling us more about just how bad the drought is. We hear there are some restrictions on irrigation, but the government says there is no shortage of drinking water.
Yes, I can explain that shortly. It's a system the Dutch government uses in cases of drought periods. Then we have 4 categories of alertness, and we arrived at the lowest category, and that means that there's less water for irrigation, less water for low economic activity, and also people are asked to use less drinking water to reduce the usage of water, which is only the first level of crisis. We have the 4 levels, so up to now it's an alarming situation, but it's not yet a real crisis. But still, it's very strange for a very wet country that we have such a shortage of water.
Indeed. Can you also explain to us how, with 2/3 of the Dutch population living below sea level, droughts could become a serious problem?
Yes, that's this part of the country, which is more or less of half of the country, is below sea level, and largest part of the population is living there. But remaining the dikes safe and remaining the soil, which is peaty soil, wet enough to not shrink too fast and to keep the dikes strong. Dikes need to be filled with water, and peaty ground, peaty bottoms need to be filled with water, otherwise they shrink, and if they shrink, the dikes would fall, and if the land sinks, then the houses would get cracks. So to prevent all this damage to infrastructure and dikes, we need to have enough water in this part of the country. The water comes from the River Rhine, major part, and the River Meuse. The River Meuse is not a problem at the moment, but the River Rhine is a problem. The amount of water which falls in the European Alps is lowering and lowering, partly because there's less snow this winter, partly because the glaciers are smaller and delivering less water, and in combination the snow and the ice and the low amount of rain falling in the Alps, less water goes through the River Rhine, that means that we can use less water to get this lower part of the country wet. And that's needed because we need to safeguard our dikes, but it's also needed to keep the silty water from the sea, seepage of silt water into the country, so salinization of the lower parts. And that would also harm our agriculture. So a lot of things are connected to the amount of water in the River Rhine, and the River Rhine is lowering and lowering, and it's now at the second lowest level ever. So if this would go on, then we don't have enough water to fill our lower areas. That's part of the problem. The other part is in the other half of the country, which is high up, but high up means in the Netherlands only up to 50, 70 meters. And their drought comes because in winter it's very wet, and we try to get rid of the water very fast. But if we don't have enough storage of water, then we have shortage in summer. So now we have drought in the higher areas and the risk of salinization and breaking dikes in the lower areas. And that's why there's a kind of first stage crisis situation.
Professor, tell us more about what can be done at this point, and what would you say are the lessons for the rest of the world when it comes to this crisis that the Netherlands is facing?
I think there are two very important lessons. One is try to store the water at the places where it falls. So rainwater storage you mostly do in underground, in filling up the groundwater levels. And we have lowered our groundwater levels so far for agricultural production that now we have a shortage which harms the agricultural production. So groundwater levels should be heightened so you can store more rainwater in the soil, and if the soil has more water, then you have less shortage in summer. And for the lower parts of the country, it's important to have enough river water, and again, that's the same situation. If we have more storage and retention of water along the River Rhine, so in Germany and in Switzerland, because the River Rhine comes from the Alps in Switzerland through Germany down to the Netherlands, and if all the side branches of the Rhine, you would also store more water in their infiltration areas, in their rainwater when the rain falls, if in the catchments of the smaller streams, which fill up the Rhine and the Alps itself. If we store water in the whole catchment, then we would have enough water in summer. So it should be a joint action of the European states to really store rainwater at the places where it falls, and then slowly let it flow down the river so we get a less dynamic river level, and we have enough water in the delta to really safeguard the lower areas. Because the consequence otherwise would be that you can't live anymore in these lower areas. At least you can't do agricultural production because of the salt.
Right, Professor, we're leaving it there for the moment, but thanks very much for being here and helping us better understand the implications of that crisis that the Netherlands is facing.
Yes, you are welcome. Thank you.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.